You remember those quotes from anonymous ACC athletic directors just trashing Notre Dame? Well, now there are other anonymous ACC ADs who love the Irish.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
He's Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I'm Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. And on this episode of Locked On ACC, there is no announced tiebreaker format yet, for ACC football for that conference championship game where they had to go to the seventh tiebreaker last year. So no announcement yet, but we found out the reason why this is being slow played. And I think there's a good reason why we're not going to know until closer to the football season. Could football programs in the ACC do what Duke basketball has just done, cutting a rights deal for Amazon Prime for non-conference games streaming? Could this be a revenue source for some of the big football programs in the conference? But Kenton, we'll start with a good old-fashioned quote war, okay?
Right.
So I'm not doubting the reporting that Brett McMurphy from On3 Sports. And we talked a lot, it was Monday or Tuesday, about those quotes he got from anonymous athletic directors in the ACC who were very critical of Notre Dame, called them crybabies for, opting out of the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and a lot of venting about that favorable one-sided deal they have with the ACC. You and I are on the same page that, hey, if you're complaining about it, let's blame the former ACC commissioner who put them in that sweetheart deal. Don't blame Notre Dame for it. So after that McMurphy report, where I don't know, maybe he cherry-picked some quotes of ADs who are anti-Notre Dame, and then maybe The Athletic, in a great report that came out on Friday, they might have cherry-picked some quotes from athletic directors who are not anti-Notre Dame. So we have a good old-fashioned quote-off. Let me give you some of these, Kenton. An ACC athletic director, in response to the On3 report, said, "That's BS." He was perplexed by the notion that Notre Dame is using the league. Another wondered why skipping the Pop-Tarts Bowl, Georgia Tech moved up in the ACC Bowl rotation to take Notre Dame's slot, was a negative for the league at all. While the second AD said he didn't like the concept of Notre Dame skipping the bowl game, he failed to see why it would trigger pitchforks and torches from his counterparts. He said, quite frankly, everybody else benefited by going up a slot. He said, none of us were harmed, and we were probably helped by them not going to Orlando for the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So, and you know what, Kenton? That actually makes sense because, the actual full football members were able to benefit from the non-football member taking their ball and going home.
Donno, I know which athletic director this was. I can tell you. I figured it out, okay? I figured it out. Now, normally you're not supposed to tell, but we're going to break this stuff live on Locked On ACC. Or not live, I'm sorry, pre-recorded on Locked On ACC. We're going to break this news to you, okay? Mm-hmm. The first athletic director is named Phillips, okay? Phillips is the first athletic director. Now, the second athletic director is a real slippery guy. He likes to stay in the quiet, likes to stay in the background. He goes by Jimmy P. I don't know. Now, the third one really is anonymous. I'm still doing some digging there. But, Donno, this is very clearly an attempt to repair that relationship and whatnot because, the reality is it's sure, you can go with the argument that, yes, there is benefits to having Notre Dame and ACC. Absolutely. I have never said there are zero benefits to having Notre Dame be a partial ACC member. There absolutely are. However, it is the same thing that goes in human nature and has been here for quite some time. You are watching one person who is a part of a very similar deal to you get favorable treatment that you are not able to receive. It's perfectly fine to be upset at that. And even the notion of, well, everybody moved up because they got out of the way. So then that means that every other year they're pushing everybody else down by existing.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So, like, what are we, again, hey, Jim, I got you. Don't worry. I know I outed you on this show. I know, some people from the office are going to be upset about that. But the reality is, it's very clear. Yes, there are benefits. Nobody's denying that, right? As Brian Smith said, if any of these guys got a job for Notre Dame, well, of course, that money
Yeah.
talks and everything else walks. We all know that. Donno, if somebody told you right now, I give you $3 million to be the host of Locked On Notre Dame, and you can't talk about the Canes in the positive light anymore, are you gonna keep on that?
Oh,
For
you're
$3
putting me in
million.
a tough spot here. I plead the fifth, but I think you know my answer.
He plead the $3 million. That's what he plead. Okay, he plead that he's in South Bend. But in
I
all seriousness,
cannot be bought for less than $2.9 million. Just so
less
we're
than two,
clear.
less than 2.9, get out of Donno face. Now, once you go above
Yeah.
3, you're in action. But in all seriousness, that's what this seems like. This seems like a very intentional, like, hey, even if this isn't Jim Phillips actually being the anonymous ADs, he may have put some pressure on the ADs that he knew would respond favorably to, hey, go talk to them. Go on over there. You know how you had to nudge your boy to go talk to the pretty girl at the dance. Same thing. Hey, go talk to the athletic. Tell them Notre Dame is cool. Tell them we like Notre Dame. Go talk to them.
I mean, it's been well publicized. Jim Phillips and Pete Bavacqua, they talked it over. Remember in December, Bavacqua, who's the athletic director from Notre Dame, essentially went on a media tour. Like, he did multiple press conferences. Like, one presser was not enough. He did a media tour where he was complaining about how badly the ACC treated them because their social media manager, had the audacity to, tweet out the score of a game that did happen between Miami and Notre Dame, and Miami won that game. And Pete said that he and Jimmy P, they worked it out, right? Jimmy P said he and Pete worked it out. So, yeah, Kenton, maybe with that comes Jim Phillips is probably encouraging his member institutions. Hey, guys, I just put out a fire a few months ago. Like, don't give me another fire with Notre Dame to put out. Can we say something nice about the Irish for a change? So there may be something to that.
Again, as much as I want to like Jim Phillips, as much as I want to give him credit for things, every time I do, every time I pat him on the behind, I pull back a handful of crap. Every single time. So this time I'm gonna just say, this is Jim Phillips doing standard Jim Phillips things, and this is something that even if I didn't believe that he would crap in bed after I gave him a compliment, I still wouldn't compliment this because again, this is like your athletic directors have a legitimate gripe. Your athletic directors aren't making something up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, yes, sure, it's cool to see that guy's Lambo parked out front when he's coming over and doing all the things that we talked about in yesterday's show, sure, or 2 days ago show. Sure, it's cool to have that Lambo in your front yard, but all the bad stuff is still there. So, I get it. Jim Phillips put out the fire, and for financial reasons, they have to act as if there is no fire. Oh, everything's fine. There is no war in Ba Sing Se. Sure, they have to do that to keep up appearances. But the reality is what the reality is. And again, it makes a lot of sense that people would be mad at a university that felt just miffed, just was mortified and shocked and bewildered by the idea that a full member gets better treatment than us. What? My land.
So another thing, Jim Phillips offered a little quick clarity on the push for a 24-team playoff, and I do think there's kind of like a psyop narrative that's being put out there. We'll talk about that and so much more. Plus, can ACC programs benefit from doing what Duke has done with Amazon Prime? You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Oh, and my friends, we are only getting started with Rocket Money. If you've ever looked at your bank account and thought, where did all my money go? You're not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast. But that's where Rocket Money comes in, helping you take control of your finances all in one place. Rocket Money tracks all your subscriptions in one spot and can cancel the ones you don't need with just a few taps. It automatically categorizes your spending so you can actually see where your money's going, and you can set budgets, get alerts, and stay on top of upcoming bills. It just makes everything feel more organized and gives you a clearer picture of your finances day to day. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen. So Kenton, I'm going to die on this hill that a valid criticism of the 2014 playoff format is the devaluing of the regular season. That when you talk about potentially 4 lost teams, hell, maybe even 5 lost teams if they have the right media narratives behind them, making the college football playoff, I do think that devalues the regular season. But I feel like this narrative that's now out there is being intentionally used as like a psyop to try and invalidate the entire premise of this devaluing the regular season. Because I noticed some influencers are out there and they're like, well, you know what? What if you do a 2014 playoff and then when Michigan and Ohio State play each other in the game, they're going to be resting starters now. They're going to be resting starters and taking it easy so they stay healthy for the playoff. Like, no one with half a brain is saying that, Kenton. I mean, saying you could devalue the regular season with a bigger playoff is not the same thing as some idiot out there saying that the two teams that hate each other the most in this sport, maybe in sports period, would rest their starters in the final regular season game. Like, I feel like people are taking it out there too far, and those are actually people who are proponents of the 2014 playoff, and they're throwing that narrative out there to make the whole thing feel ridiculous. Because, no, I would not expect Michigan and Ohio State to stop taking their game seriously. That's ridiculous.
Donno, when I was a Michigan fan, you could have taken one of my pinkies off before I would have decided to take it easy on Ohio State as, in the game. And now that I'm a North Carolina State graduate, I am the exact same way about the Dirty Foot Club. If both of us reached that cachet where it was 1 versus 2, and it was either in Carter Finley or Kenan Stadium, and they said, hey, number 1 versus number 2, both of these teams could rest their start. The stuff that you must be smoking to believe that that is feasible hadn't even been created yet.
Yeah.
We're still at least 30 years out from technological advances and advances in the different types of drugs that we can mix and cultivate before we get into some stuff that makes that seem logical.
Yeah.
I can understand if you said, late season games in general will be worthless, whatever. The school's biggest rivalries? Let's do the math on this, Donno. Even with the 2014 playoff, that means what % of schools won't be getting in? There's about, 130, 140?
Listen, can you just tell me, because you're asking me to run a percentage of 24 out of 138.
Well, either way you cut this slice. Either way you cut this slice, Donno. There's over 100 teams. There's over 120 teams that are not going to the playoff, right?
Yeah.
Those 120 teams that are not going to the playoffs, you think all of them are just going to be, hey, pack it up, pack it in. We know rivalry week is coming up. We know the week to play the team that we hate the most in the world is coming up, but we're just going to throw it all away. Alabama will not be a national championship contender every year. The world don't work like that. No school will be. Yeah. Miami won't be. Florida State damn sure wasn't. We see it. NC State has not been historically, nor has UNC, nor has Louisville, nor has the majority of the ACC. But do you think that Virginia and Virginia Tech are going to look across that field and say, hey, we ain't got no shot to playoffs. Let's just, the Commonwealth, this rivalry don't mean nothing, man. Y'all, hey, you gentlemen go home, we'll go home. Let's shake hands and get our 2s and 3s in there. Huh? Although the reality of college football has changed because of all of the money and things like that, although we've seen players, switch sides in these rivalries and all that, those are real things that have happened. Yeah. But one thing that you will never see is entire teams, and not just a team or two, not just a team whose head coach was fired or whatever. I mean entire like large swaths of teams go into rivalry week and say, I'm good. I don't really care.
Yeah, so it's like they bring up this extreme example to kind of make the whole thing seem wacky, which is what I don't like. Because, okay, when I talk about devaluing the regular season, I'm not saying teams won't try as hard. I'm saying that if you can get into the playoffs with 4 losses, it takes interest away from the regular season. Because I'm old enough to remember when you're watching your favorite team, they lose one time and you're thinking, oh my God, that might be it. Like, we may be mathematically eliminated from a national championship with this one loss. I'm not saying anyone's going to try less hard on Saturdays. I'm just saying if you can get in with 4 losses, the regular season is not the same for me.
And Donno, remember a time when there was a big upset happening, when the number 1 overall team or something like that was about to go down, and you got a call from one of your other friends if you weren't watching that game because you were watching your boys play. Hey man, you got to watch this game here, bro. It's going down. These boys about to get knocked out the BCS championship, and you just like, what word? Now I got to flip over there and all that. This takes away from that. You know why? Because that one loss, inconsequential. Until that one loss is loss number 3 or 4. That one loss is like, if you play in the right conference, it happens. It's a mulligan. Yeah. Why would I call you and say, Donno, you got to check out. You got to check out Duke and Florida State right now, man. I'm telling you, Florida State is finally back and Duke is about to get them. Why would I need to call you like that? If
you don't.
Even if Duke wins that game. Fair. But even if Duke wins that game, everything still works out the same for Florida State. You get what I'm saying? Or vice versa, right?
Sure.
Like it just doesn't make sense. It does not make sense to pretend as if the acknowledgement that this changes things is now the same as to conflate that with nothing matters anymore and everything is doom and gloom and nobody will ever try hard again because now that everybody's getting paid, no players have incentive to work hard anymore. By the way, that was a real argument against paying college football players. Once you start paying these guys, they won't play hard anymore. So all this foolishness, we know that you do not need that many teams in the college football playoff. We know that it devalues the regular season and strips college football of one of the unique aspects of it. But we don't need to take it to a point where it's like teams that got the college football playoff already locked up, they're just going to rest their players. Because a lot like I said about Pitt last year when they said you could lose to Notre Dame by 100. It will be okay. Loserville stuff, when it affects your team, you cannot just shake it and get rid of it. You can't just do a little happy dance and the Loserville stuff is gone. When you start accepting mediocrity, that becomes a lifestyle. Being a champion, being a winner happens in every single choice you make.
Yeah. By the way, when you brought up the whole thing about paying players, it reminded me of something that I saw today here Friday. We don't have the full details on this because it sounds like the news outlets are still waiting on the full memo, but Brandon Marcello of CBS Sports is teasing that the Senate, the U.S. Senate, is taking another crack at bipartisan legislation of college sports because they don't think that SCORE Act is going to pass, but there's I don't know very many senators. Like Ted Cruz was one of them on the Republican side. There was a Democratic senator that he's working with, like a bipartisan bill. And so, again, they don't have the full details on this, but supposedly part of this bipartisan bill is going to be, and this could be a very good thing. It could also be a slippery slope. But part of that bill is going to be reportedly, Kenton, ensuring that like NIL deals do not circumvent the salary cap, I guess you call it, which is the revenue sharing cap, which is at like $20.5 million. It's going to go above that. So why I say this could be a very good thing. Like it could be a very good thing if you're basically saying, pay for play will not, outside of the $20.5 million cap or whatever the cap is at any given time, that like extra deals that are basically disguising pay for play money as NIL, that will not be tolerated. I think we can all agree that's probably a good thing. But I guess what I would be worried about, Kenton, is the idea that you take away basically free market NIL deals from players. That's what I would be worried about, because there are some cases where if it's a legit NIL deal, you're advertising a product and you're a big, like you think, and it's not always football players. Like, think about what a superstar like Livy Dunn and Angel Reese, like there have been some huge superstars even outside of football who are, Tiger Woods' son, who have the gravitas to actually cut legitimate seven-figure NIL deals. So, like, I don't want those opportunities to be taken away, Kenton. So I hope that, that this involves some kind of a robust clearinghouse process, because if your idea is imposing a salary cap where you don't have collective bargaining and you're taking away legitimate advertising opportunities, because, like, the NFL has a salary cap, but there's no cap on legitimate advertising revenue. Patrick Mahomes can do as many State Farm commercials as he wants, and that doesn't count against his contract. So where I say slippery slope is, like, eliminating pay-for-play or fake NIL deals, that's good. But taking away actual NIL opportunities, if that's what they're looking to do, bad.
Everybody loves the free market till the wrong people get access to it, huh?
Yeah.
The wrong folks start making too much off it, huh? This is foolishness. This is foolishness. Here's the thing. There are schools that have, there are schools that have not. I'm NC State grad here. I know I'm not one of the schools that's just having it to where if we want your quarterback, we can come get your quarterback. We want your running back, we want to come get your running back. I understand that. But what I also understand is if we are doing this thing and saying, hey, these young men can get paid as much as their heart allows, as much as these teams are willing to give them, then let's do that. The idea that we will create true parity via, lowering the amount that these guys get paid. Donno, you tell me, what's the last time we've seen a true dynasty in college football? A true, like, hey, every year we expect them in the national championship, and every year they've been. You tell me when the last time we saw one of those.
Hey, Kirby Smart with UGA up until about 4 years ago. There was Saban with Bama for a hot second. Dabo won too. They were in there for a while. This is not since NIL became a big thing though.
And that is my point exactly.
Yeah.
If we're talking about we'll have more parity when the payment stopped, where was the parity when nobody was getting paid, allegedly?
That's right. Well, and that was part of the problem, that the programs who were doing it behind the scenes had a bigger advantage than when it was out in the open.
Again, there is more parity in college football right now than ever before. Yeah. If you would have told somebody in 2018, Indiana football will not only be your national champions, but the year before that, the only game they'll lose is to Ohio State, and then they'll lose one to Notre Dame, and that's it. They would have took you out back and put you down like a dog. You understand? Yep. They would have said, just look at the trees.
Seems a little drastic, but I mean.
Just look at the trees. You're speaking too much nonsense. You're speaking too much nonsense. This is
go down like Old Yeller.
They'll get you. Okay, they might not put you down, but they'll get you in a nice soft room with no hard edges. They get you some grippy socks, and you would have a nice little vacation. 3 hots and a cot every single day in a nice padded room, right? And now Indiana is one of the kings of football. So it confuses me when people say, well, we're doing this for the integrity of the sport, for the players, for the this, for the that, because almost every argument, when you actually look at it, none of them hold true. I'm doing it for parity. Parity is greater now. We're doing it for the players. Do you think that players would want to make less money? Do you think that any player is like, hey, I want to make less or any of that? Now, I will say there needs to be collective bargaining amongst the players, because college athletes, if you can hear the sound of my voice, please understand this. This is the what? Second, third, fourth, fifth. This is the 11th time, in the words of the Yin Yang twins, that government officials and coaches have gotten together to mess with your pockets.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother was in the union, UAW, for a long time, and one of the things that they taught her, which she in turn taught her children, who then taught me, either you bargain collectively or you beg individually. And right now, athletes, if you're not paying attention, you're going to get really close to begging individually, because the NCAA and the government keep saying, we got to find a way to cut this down. We got to find a way to limit this. We got to find a way to shrink this.
And to be fair, like our conversation is kind of the sum of all fears. Like we don't have the details of how this is actually going to work, but this is like our worst fear would be taking away actual free market advertising opportunities from players who would have those at their, access to those deals in any other walk of life other than playing college sports. We don't want those to be taken away. A deal like that was cut by Duke basketball with Amazon Prime. Could football programs follow suit? You want to keep it locked right here? We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen. And if you haven't yet, make sure you join that Everydayer Club. If you listen to our shows every day, you're an Everydayer. Make that status official by going to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer and join the Everydayer Club for your favorite shows, whether that's Locked On ACC, Locked On Wolfpack with Kenton and Grayson, Locked On Canes with me. When you become an Everydayer, you get exclusive ad-free versions of our episodes, Discord chat access with hosts and other listeners like yourself. So many other great benefits. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer to join the Everydayer Club today. All right, so with Duke striking that deal with Amazon Prime, and it's not exactly smooth sailing because I think the Big Ten is probably going to keep Michigan from playing in that game on Amazon Prime because the Big Ten feels like they should own the rights to that neutral site game. So Duke might have to find another opponent for one of those two. But they struck a deal with Amazon Prime. It's an NIL deal for their athletes plus a streaming deal for neutral site games. And I'm not surprised, like Jim Phillips said, hey, Duke came up with something creative, right? I think Phillips is just happy if his member schools can find ways to make additional revenue outside of that crappy grant of rights. The commissioner should be happy about that. So Jimmy P is not going to stand in their way. So I guess my question would be, Kenton, for football programs, right? Like, Florida State, Clemson, Miami might be big enough brands where they could neutral site games find interest from streaming partners like that to make additional revenue. Do you think that's the road we're going to go down, or do you think the ACC and ESPN might find a way to block that because football is still more valuable than even Duke basketball right now?
I'd be very surprised if they didn't find a way to block that because, like you said, football is more valuable, but even beyond that, you just have less opportunities, right? Yeah. So in taking away that one game for Duke, how many non-conference games will ESPN still have for Duke for basketball?
Yeah, dozens, yeah.
Now, let's try that with football. We take away one of Miami, one of Florida State, one of Clemson, one of, Louisville's, one of their – you take away one of their non-conference games, how many do you have left? How many opportunities do you have left? 3?
A handful. Yeah. I was going to say just a few. Yeah.
So you're looking at a very different circumstance there. And when you look at that type of circumstance, it has to be made very, very clear. It wouldn't even make sense. Wouldn't even add up to say like, hey, we're going to treat football the same way we would basketball. Because again, you could get that big game from Duke not televised under you, and you can still recover with another big game that is. In football, if you lose one big game, let's say Clemson cancels with Clemson LSU, and then they find another dance partner that's from the Big Ten or somewhere else that is not under ESPN, and they get a different type of coverage deal. ESPN just lost massively in that.
Yeah,
I don't think that they'll be as okay losing a quarter of their out-of-conference football revenue as they would be losing 1/10, 1/12, 1/8 of their out-of-conference basketball.
Yeah, no, that's a good point because like I saw they had a stat in the story that do you remember like when Duke played Michigan out of conference last year? It was a massive game.
Yeah,
but it did like 4.3 million views, and like Clemson versus Georgia Tech, which in football, which is like an okay game, but it wasn't like the end all be all, did more than double the rating number from that.
Exactly.
So football is king. Football is still king.
It's very clear. And you're going to treat the king in a different way than you treat every other piece on the board. That's just the way that it works, right? Obviously, when that king is gone, it's over. You can sacrifice every other piece. That's the one piece. Ain't no sacrificing him. When he's gone, the game is over. So, obviously, I highly doubt that the ACC and, ESPN and company would just be okay. Well, the ACC would be okay with it because Jim Phillips is, he's one of those guys, whatever keeps everybody happy and smiling, I'm happy to do it. Yeah. But in terms of what creates success in this moment, Jim Phillips would definitely be a little bit more, hush-hush about things.
Yeah, I was a little off, by the way, on the rating of that Clemson-Georgia Tech. It did do more than the Duke basketball game, though. So here's the exact stat. Duke-Michigan, which was a banger of a game and a huge game, $4.3 million for basketball. Miami versus Notre Dame in football last year, $10.8 million. Clemson, Georgia, $4.8 million. And even FSU versus Virginia, which was either a Thursday night or I think it was a Friday night game, did $4.4 million. So even football matchups, even if they're not like the end-all, be-all, will tend to do more than that game did. But last thing, Kenton, everyone, we know the ACC is working on tweaking their tiebreaker, right? Because, you had Duke won that, 5-team tiebreaker for the ACC championship game, even though they didn't have head-to-head wins against any of the teams they leaped in front of, and some of those teams had head-to-head wins over them. So a little wonky. Now, according to The Athletic, we're going to find out what the new tiebreaker is at some point before the 2026 season. I think we're going to get that probably at the ACC kickoff in July. That's usually when they like to break news like that. But they said the reason for the delay is more interesting than you'd think. Jim Phillips said he's pitched the other conference commissioners on a common tiebreaker system, either one for the Power Four or one for the entire football bowl subdivision, FBS. If everyone had the same procedures, fans wouldn't have to study manuals to understand why CFP rankings more in determining the American champion than the ACC champion. There are challenges, Phillips said, like the number of teams and conference games in each league, but his hope is to make a collective system that's more digestible for fans. You know what? I'm rooting for Phillips on that because I think it's a great idea. If you can get at least all the Power Four, if not all of FBS football, to have like the same tiebreaker protocol, that just makes too much sense. Because I know like in college sports, the conferences have more autonomy, but it's like in the NFL, the division tiebreakers are the same for all, 8 divisions, where it's not the same in college football. So I would love to get a uniform system.
I don't have too much to say about this. All I know is if what we're going to see here is whether or not, these teams or these conferences rather want to have things be standardized and normal. That's pretty much the only question that you have to ask here, and we'll get an answer very quickly.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't think there's too much to say except I hope they figure something out. And if they can't get the other conferences on board, I hope the ACC comes up with a kick-ass tiebreaker for just them. That's all I want. We appreciate everybody for making Locked On ACC your first listen. Make sure you follow Kenton at TGIF_Kenton and on Locked On Wolfpack. Make sure you follow me at Alex Donno and on Locked On Canes. And we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the #1 sports podcast network, the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.